The next story is the story of the Serpent Prince. Once upon a time, there was a happy kingdom with a happy king and a happy queen. And all went well and all was wonderful, except that the king and queen did not have an heir. And they needed an heir. Every king and queen needs an heir, and they had no relatives to take over the kingdom. Well, no suitable relatives anyway. And it was a source of sadness. Now, one day an old lady came by and insisted on seeing the queen. "My dear, you need a child." "Of course I need a child. Why did you come up to tell me that? Have you nothing to tell me? What was it that's so important?" "My dear, here are 2 onions. If you get into the bath with these onions and rub these onions all over yourself, everywhere, inside and out, and at the end of that bath, peel them and eat them, why, you will have a child or 2. Go away, you silly woman. Go away." But she looked at the onions, and it was time for a bath, and she started feeling the onions, and they just felt so right. She got into the bath, she rubbed herself all over, everywhere, with the onion. And it filled her with a burning desire. She got out of the bath and she scrunched up 1 onion and ate it really quickly. And then she remembered that she needed to peel the onion first. So she peeled the next onion and then she ate it. And then she went looking for the king. "Come to bed, king. Come on, king, get into bed," she pouted. "Oh, dearly, darling, I mean, really, you smell of onions. I'm not get into bed. No, I mean, you stink of onion. Get into bed." And she pushed him onto the great bed, and she clambered. "Oh, you smell of onions." And she clambered on top of him. And she had her wicked way. Now, it may be that was all that it took, because, truth be told, they hadn't really done what married people are supposed to do for a long time and hadn't really ever got the hang of it. Be that as it may, in 9 months' time, she was brought to bed. When she gave birth, what came out of her but a snake? Well, the midwife, looking around to check that no one saw, took the snake and threw it out of the window. And then a healthy boy popped out, which they called George. He was the apple of their parents' eye and the joy of the kingdom. Everybody was so happy. And George grew up as the blue-eyed boy, the bringer of good news and health and happiness, and all was wonderful. But the king and the queen, they got older, and they thought that it was time that Prince George should go to another kingdom and find a princess to marry and be his queen in due course. Now, George was quite happy to go out and inspect pretty princesses, even if he really loved Mary, but he knew he had to marry a princess. So he set out in his carriage, and they were just about to leave the kingdom, growing to cross the bridge, leaving the forest, when a great serpent blocked the path, blocked the road. You shall not pass. The serpent hissed. Well, they stopped the carriage. Why, what's happened? There's a serpent blocking the road. Well, carry on. It's a very big serpent, Your Majesty. Well, it's a huge serpent. Well, I'm Prince George. I can deal with dragons. I can deal with serpents, he said. And he got out, swaggering with his sword. But then he saw that the snake really was a very big snake. You shall not pass. You shall not marry until I am married. Let's go back, not today. So they went back. And after a bit, they tried a different route out of the kingdom. But each time they tried to get out of the kingdom, the snake was there saying the same thing. So the king and the queen hold a meeting, a cabinet meeting, and it was agreed that if the snake would not let Prince George pass until the snake himself was married, they would invite the snake to the palace and get the snake married. So the snake was invited and he slivered up. And they thought that as he was a snake, he wasn't going to be very fussy. So they went into the prison and they found an evil woman, and rather an ugly woman, and they married the snake to the woman, and they took them off and put them in a bedroom together. In the morning, the snake was in bed with a big bulge, and there was nothing to be seen of the woman. They tried a few more women, but they didn't try any suitable women, shall we say, none that suited the snake's taste, or perhaps they suited the snake's taste a little bit too well, if you know what I mean. Now, to travel to another town in the kingdom and to travel back a little bit, there was a father with a daughter who he loved, and a wife who died, who married another woman, and this woman tried to love her stepdaughter. She really did, I think. But once she had a couple of daughters of her own, she couldn't love this stepdaughter. And once the father died, she really didn't love the stepdaughter. And she heard that the serpent needed a bride, said, "You will be the bride. You will go and marry. But the serpent eats everyone. You will marry the serpent." She knew she couldn't argue with her stepmother. She said, "Listen, I will go tomorrow, but I must go. I must spend the night with my mother in the cemetery." So she spent the night on her mother's grave, and she fell asleep. When she woke up, she had 3 walnuts in her hand that she thought she'd better keep in case they came in useful. She was taken, and the serpent said, "They're a very pretty girl, delightful." And she said, "Well, I will marry the serpent, but I need a new bedroom, and I need a bath in it, and a scrubbing brush." Was provided, and they married, and the serpent and she went to the bedroom. "Take your clothes off." "You take your clothes off first." "None of the other girls said that. Just take your clothes off first." "Oh, all right." And the snake took one skin off, and then the lady, she took one item of clothing or two. And so it went until on the one side there was a strange, misshapen ball of flesh, and on the other, of bloody flesh on the floor, and on the other, a very beautiful, naked lady. But she took up the strange, misshapen lump of flesh, of bloody flesh, and she got into the bath, and she scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed. And guess what she found there? Underneath, she found the most handsome prince that anyone has ever seen. And once he was clean, well, they went to bed and they did what people do on their wedding night. Several times. In the morning, the chamberlain came, expecting to find a snake asleep in the bed with a big bulge in it. But what he saw, spread out on the bed, asleep in each other's arms, was a beautiful, naked couple. And he went and told the king and the queen, and they came and looked, and of course they covered themselves up. And then the serpent explained that he was the serpent prince, and that he had been born first and thrown out of the window and had lived in the forest. They thought this was very strange, and they sent for the midwife, and the midwife said, yes, a snake was born. And then the woman, the queen, remembered the old woman, and she sent for the old woman. And the old woman said, you didn't peel the first onion, did you? Well, he was recognized as the Serpent Prince. Prince George was happy, for he could marry Mary and be a good brother. And the Serpent Prince, when his parents died, became the Serpent King and lived happily ever after.